How's everyone doing tonight? Good. Good. All right. So I'm gonna get us started. Thanks for your patience with the food and everything this evening. My name is Marion. I'm the program coordinator for Semester in Detroit, and soon I'll be passing off moderation. But I just wanted to start out this evening by taking a moment of silence to honor the passing of Mama Lila Kabul. Mama Lila was a beloved water warrior and civil rights activist in Detroit. She often joined in on our conversations here at Detroiters Speak, whether on a formal panel or just in the audience. She always brought her contagious energy and passion for justice with her into every space that she occupied. She passed this past weekend, and we'd just like to take a moment to honor her spirit. Thank you, Mama Lila, for everything that you brought to us here in the city. Just a couple notes about the class. Sorry to move on to just a quick logistical note, is that we're not meeting again officially until March 21st, which is 3 weeks from today. But we were recently able to schedule a Know Your Rights training for March 14th here in the same space at the Cass Commons from 7 to 9 p.m. We know it's Wayne State's spring break, but if anyone's still in town and wants to come through, it's going to be led by the National Lawyers Guild, and basically it's a training to so you can know your rights in case of encounters with police officers. So I'll be sending out that info through the listserv and also posting it on the Facebook events as well. All right, so without further ado, I'm going to introduce the moderator for the evening. Yemisi Odetoyinbo is a graduate of the University of Michigan and current graduate student at Wayne State pursuing her master's in social work. She's been involved in organizing in the city of Detroit since high school and currently organizes with Black Youth Project 100 Detroit, where she serves as the Healing and Safety Chair. Yemisi is also involved in the No New Jails Coalition, which aims to end incarceration and builds new forms of community safety, healing, and accountability. So give it up for Yemisi.
Hi. So this session is called Policing Identities. So it's all about seeing the different ways that the police have impacted different identity groups. So we are running shorter on time, so we are just going to jump right into it. We have an amazing panel of speakers here to share their experience and answer questions. So I'm just going to have each speaker one by one just introduce themselves and a little bit about what they do. And we'll start at the end with Bridget. Can I like? Okay, we'll start with Bridget. So just come right on up.
Good evening. I'm Bridget Dawson. I work at the Ruth Ellis Center. I'm one of the program directors for the Transcripts of Color Project. I'm born and raised from Detroit. And that is all.
Good evening, everyone. Peace and blessings. My name is Asha Noor. I work with CARE Michigan. I'm a racial justice and human rights activist. First place I lived was Detroit. Ended up relocating to DC when I got older and eventually moved back. Thank you.
Peace, everybody. How y'all doing? All right, you looking good, sounding good. My name is Siwatu-Salama Ra. Native Detroiter for the past 3 years. I was executive co-director here at East Michigan Environmental Action Council. Number of years around environmental justice work, climate justice work in the city of Detroit. Daughter of Rhonda Anderson. Some people call me or refer to me as a political prisoner as I stand in front of you wearing one of the things that they use to police Black people, which is an electronic monitoring device that monitors and actually records every word that I say. So as of 4 months ago, I was reunited with my family and released from prison, pending bond. And I have you to thank for that, really, for the love and support and for the fight. Hope to share some of that insight and share some of those words, and from not only from me but also from the women back in the prison who I've left behind. So thank you for coming out.
Good evening. My name's Arthur Bowman. I'm a native Detroiter. I am also with Black Youth Project 100 Detroit. I'm the chair of policy and political education, and I'm a graduate student at Wayne State University pursuing my PhD in physics.
Good evening. What happened? Okay. Anyway, my name is Baba Baxter, and I'm an elder here in the community. I was born and raised right here in Detroit. I remember when Detroit was almost 2 million people. That's how long I've been here. My grandparents came here and settled in the 1920s. I'm a former school teacher. I'm an activist, an advocate, and at the forefront of everything that I do is disability rights, disability justice, and disability pride. So sit back, fasten your seatbelts, and let's get this on.
Thanks so much for those wonderful introductions. So today we have one central question that we're asking all of the panelists to explore and give some more information about. And that is, how does policing impact your communities? How does policing impact your specific identity, or maybe the multiple identities that you share? So anyone can really start if you want to answer that question. Sorry, the mic only goes so far. So if you're at the end, you might have to come.
Is there a way? Is there a way so that the panelists don't have to get up? Or yeah, somebody goes. You could, I could carry it. Yeah. So that was all like this way, that way. Like not. Like on the other side. Mary, okay. I'm gonna try to. And then it can. There you go. Oh, okay.
Awesome. We're business, so no one has to get up. Woo! All right. So again, the question is, how does policing impact your community?
Okay, hello again. How does policing affect my community? Well, to start, I'm a part of the LGBT community, specifically trans. I'm gonna just keep it like on 100. It's a negative effect, kind of, because it's a lot of, I guess you could say gay bashing, but it's not really gay bashing. It's like against the trans community, because I can only speak for my community. My experiences with the police have always been negative. A few things I don't think it's comfortable for transgender women to be put in an all-male prison or all-male, jails, just seeing as like certain things might want to kill us or might want to jump on you because they don't agree with your lifestyle or whatever it is. I'm gonna just tell a quick story. In about 2012, I had an incident where I was walking down Woodward. The Ruth Ellis Center is located 77 Victor, Woodward in Manchester. I was leaving the center where I worked and was walking back down to 6 Mile in Woodward and was followed by the Highland Park Police the whole way. On the loudspeaker, do you know that that's a man? Or get your, it was vulgar words. I'm not gonna cuss because I see there's kids in here. But yeah, just a lot of different things, like all the way for like a mile. And by the time we made it to 6 Mile, they can't cross there because it's not their jurisdiction. I finally walked across, but once we made it to 6 Mile, I turned around and I asked both officers for their badge numbers and their names. They laughed, thinking that, oh, we're just going to give her our names and stuff. Nothing is going to happen. And the end result was 5 officers got fired and indicted for drug charges, along with a lot of other things. Thank you. So basically, like I said, it's just a negative outlook just because they feel like, well, some of them, I'm not going to say all of them, feel like they have certain power to do whatever it is that they want to do. And some of them are not taught to be open-minded because my lifestyle, I'm not imposing on your lifestyle. So that's just my experience. Thank you.
Thank you for sharing, and thank you guys all for coming out here and hearing our stories and how policing impacts our individual and intersectional identities. As a Black Muslim woman who is also an immigrant, there are different ways in which the policing or the criminalization in and of itself affect my direct community and myself included. For example, some of the things that will impact the Black community will impact Black Muslims. Things that are gendered that might impact women also, so on and so forth. But there are some very specific things when it comes to the Muslim community that I would say is more so directly impacts folks who practice a faith tradition or folks who may be perceived to also practice a faith tradition. And how many of you guys have heard the word Islamophobia? Right, so it's a pretty common term. There's a lot of disputes in academic and activist spaces about whether or not we should move away from that word because it's not all-encompassing. It just sounds like, okay, well, people are afraid of Muslims. Like, that's not the worst possible thing, right? However, it's deeply structural and systemic, just the same ways that racism is. When I think about Islamophobia, I think about the immigration system and how it targets Muslim immigrants. I think about TSA. I think about the ways in which Muslims are policed when we attempt to travel. I think about certain policies like the no-fly list. I don't know how many of you guys know about the no-fly list. Right, so it's a list that doesn't have any particular oversight. You can just find yourself on the list, and it's really difficult to get off of the list. The organization I work with not too long ago actually sued the government because of the lack of transparency around the no-fly list, and we were able to get information on who was on it. And you'd be surprised to know that some of the folks on the list were 6-month-old babies, right? Folks with disabilities, folks who are, elderly, but there's no real background as to why they make that list, except for the fact that they happen to be Muslim and happen to have a Muslim name. So that's just one structural way that Muslims are policed, as well as treatment in TSA. Many Muslims have to go through something called secondary screening. How many of you guys have gotten an SSS on your boarding passes? It's usually the political leaning people or if you're just Muslim, right? Like those are the two categories. I've almost always had SSS on my boarding pass, meaning that I need to get, secondary pat downs on my scarf, questions about religiosity, how many times I pray, why I went to this country, so on and so forth. So again, that's another structural way that Islamophobia manifests and intersects with policing, because all of these systems, again, funnel people into the prison system, right? They don't exist in a vacuum. It's not like you can go to the airport and get stopped and potentially nothing happens. You can be criminalized. And those are just only 3 of the programs that adversely impact Muslims in terms of policing. There's also something called the CVE program. I don't know if you guys, who knows about the CVE program? Yeah, lesser known, but it stands for Countering Violent Extremism, and it almost exclusively targets the Muslim community. And it was actually piloted under President Obama in 2014. Right, he wasn't our left-leaning savior, but anyways. And so that policy came out in 2014 in 3 different cities, Los Angeles, Boston, and Minneapolis, to target Muslims to see when they would be radicalized. And it was basically through schools and through police departments. And those are the only 3 cities that it was a hard program, but Dearborn actually has a soft program here. And the Dearborn Police Department takes $250,000 to implement the CVE program, meaning that they can target Muslims to see when and if they'll become radicalized. And even though the city of Dearborn, for example, is supposed to be like a, what is it called? It escapes me, like a safe zone city or whatever. They house in the Dearborn prisons folks who have been taken by immigration and ICE. And so there's just really a lot of problematic things happening here. And the city of Detroit has the highest number of ICE and FBI agents in the entire country. And that is because of the high percentage of Muslims in the area that count for 2.75% of the population, and because of the proximity to the Canada border. And so because of all of that, we're being extremely policed in this area. We have specific programs that are targeted against us in Dearborn and Detroit. So those are just a few of the things. I don't want to like make it, go on and on, but there's a lot. There's a lot. I'll give it to Siwatu.
All right. I'm not going to spend much time because I really want to get into these groups. But I think often as a daughter of an activist, a longtime activist who is a single mother of 4 and many, many grandchildren and great-grandchildren, she represents a population in the city of Detroit that is very often ignored. Right, so how many of you know that the city of Detroit makeup household is predominantly a Black single mother? Right, so basically that's saying that Black women, single mothers, are the ones that are holding down the city of Detroit, right? Who carry the city on her shoulders through her economic weight, through many other different things, and we often ignore the things that she needs to continue to be that support system in the household, right, for the children. She's the one that is going to be mostly affected by water shutoffs, by the environmental impact. And the takeover and rape of the city of Detroit. So I often bring that up in spaces because that means that she, right, the mother, that woman, we have to listen to her and look towards her leadership. And so me as a mom, right, and predominantly around my incarceration. Through the work of the Freedom Team, we really wanted to challenge the idea of who has the ability to defend themselves. And most of the time, it's Black people, women of color, who cannot or are not allowed to say that we are fearful or that I tried to defend myself and my family, right? Because we're often looked at as the aggressor, right? You got that big stereotype of the angry black woman. Oh, you know, this very deep idea that black women are just angry people. And you know what? We might be, right? Because we go through a lot of shit, right? We take a lot of things, right? We put her through a lot of things. We take a lot of things from her. So definitely she deserves to be angry, right? But she does not deserve to be criminalized, right? So I think that that's something that we really, and I really want to dive into. So everybody here is, raise your hand if you're a part of the semester in Detroit. Okay, yeah, all right. So raise your hand if you've ever been to one of the trainings for the entering, building, and exiting communities with me and Will Copeland. Oh. Okay. All right, well, dang, Craig. Where is everybody at? No, okay, that's cool. But I brought that up because we really talk about, and we dive deeply into how to enter communities of color right here in the city of Detroit. So if we are talking about, really, and I'm being real about University of Michigan students entering the city of Detroit and entering communities of color who suffer greatly of poverty. And how can you be of service, right? In a honoring way. So we definitely very much challenge the idea of community service and what that looks like. And so you have to give knowledge to who that community is and who holds that community up. And so most of the time it's that single black woman. And so I really wanted to dive into that into my group today, the criminalization of the black woman here in America, here in the city of Detroit. The ability of having her be fearful, to say that she's fearful, because right now that's how they sent me to prison, was no one believed that a black woman could be fearful. And that's what played out in the courtroom, is that I was just an angry black woman, right? I couldn't have been protecting myself and protecting my family. And then she had a firearm. Oh, that was double, right? That was double the punishment, which then led me to go to prison and be sentenced to 2 years in prison. And another thing is that, so we all know that Detroit is greatly affected by gentrification right here in Midtown, but even more, you're starting to see it spill out into the city. So over in Northwest or on the East Side. Most of the time, it was just really kind of right here in this area, right? Midtown, Detroit. Now they're starting to, get deeper and deeper in the city of Detroit. So that means that you have young, non-people of color moving into the city of Detroit, moving into neighborhoods who are now residents, who have absolutely no connection, no relationship to the community, no relationship to the people, but now our residents are being called for jury duty. So that means we have a problem where we have people who are judging black people, black women and men, who have no idea the dynamics of our communities, sitting on jury duty, right? Because some of them get incentives to sit and be on juries, right? You get a bonus from your employer, and that's how I ended up with a majority white jury. So I had to convince this jury that I was fearful. And so that was a huge problem. That was a huge, huge problem that happened, where I had to convince a majority all-white jury that I was fearful, and they didn't believe it. So I really want to dig into that as well. And, and I appreciate you all for being here and to listening to the stories of people who are living real lives and who are being policed in ways that many can't even imagine. Thank you.
So I guess to the question, how does policing impact our communities? I think my answer to this is kind of going to be twofold. I have like a personal answer, and then I have a more like systemic answer. So personally, I fear for my life every single time I have encounters with the police. When I was 18, I was actually on my bike on the way to work, and two white police officers, pulled me over on a bike for biking on the wrong side of the street. Even though this was y'all know Detroit, our population density is quite low. So like, this was an empty ass street. I'm sorry, excuse my language. This was an empty street, but I was biking the wrong way on it, and they pulled me over. And they actually illegally searched my bag. They like illegally searched my person. They made me empty my pockets, and there was a just real, moment that sticks out in my mind to this day, where when they were patting me down, dude said, you need to open up your legs more. And I didn't really do it enough for him. And so he took a baton, he shoved it between my legs and forced my legs open. And, that is probably for me the single closest that I've come to death, or just, in that moment, I've never felt any of the other time in my life like, oh, I'm getting ready to die. This is it. Dang. So, I think a lot of people in Detroit, a lot of Black people in Detroit have these kinds of stories about their encounters with the police. It's not uncommon. Pretty much all of my friends have similar stories. But the main thing that I've really come to talk to you about today is something systematic that Detroit police have started to implement in recent years, which is gonna make experiences like what happened to me a lot worse and a lot more widespread. So, how many people in this room have heard of Project Greenlight? Okay, good. That's a fair number. So, just for anybody who hasn't heard of it or doesn't quite know the ins and outs of what it is, Project Greenlight is what's called a public-private partnership between the city of Detroit, mainly the Detroit Police Department, and local businesses and gas stations, like liquor stores, churches, and big companies like Comcast, Genentech, Dan Gilbert's, Rocket Fiber, and so on. And what happens is the city facilitates a transaction between the businesses and like Comcast and DTE, where these large companies install green lights on the business's property, and I'm sure you all have seen these like ugly flashing Disney villain neon lights, pretty much everywhere throughout the city of Detroit now. And they install green lights, and they also install security cameras. that pretty much watch the premises of the businesses that have partnered with these corporate giants. And pretty much the supposed incentive for being a Project Greenlight participant is, okay, if you have these security cameras everywhere on your premises, then they're feeding back all of the footage to the Detroit Police Department. The police department has what's called a real-time crime center, where they record all the footage, supposedly. And if you have an incident and you're a green light partner, like you have a robbery or you have a carjacking or whatever happens on your premises and you call Detroit police, then supposedly Detroit police will show up promptly, very quickly, as compared to somebody who is not a Project Greenlight participant. So basically, Project Greenlight is DPD bribing businesses to get them to do their job. And the reason why myself and my political organization, Black Youth Project 100, we're interested in dismantling Greenlight is because, number one, we don't trust the Detroit Police Department to have endless 24-hour video footage of Black people. We don't trust that at all. They're not transparent about what they are doing with that footage at all. And, as Asha was saying, Detroit is awash with ICE agents. So, for all we know, they could be taking that footage, feeding it to ICE, feeding it to other, federal law enforcement that then come up and round people up in the night. We don't know. There's zero transparency about what Detroit police is doing with the tapes. And, the other reason why we oppose it, we want to dismantle it, is because, frankly, police don't make us safer. Police showing up faster does not make us safer. It just means that they're going to show up faster to do what they did to me, shove a baton in between an 18-year-old boy's legs. There was another, or worse, right? Or worse. There was an incident recently at Detroit Receiving Hospital, which is a Project Greenlight participant, where a woman who was suffering from, she was having a mental health episode. The Detroit Receiving Hospital called the police on her because, I guess they didn't have personnel in the facility that were able to help her through this mental health crisis that she was having. And, we all know what police do when they show up and they're told to deal with somebody who's having a mental health episode, right? What do? They brutalize them. They brutalize them because they don't know how to deal with people who have, who are suffering from mental illnesses. All they know how to do is inflict violence on us. So, they promptly showed up. Yes, they had, they showed up quickly. But then one officer restrained a woman and the other officer began, pummeling her on camera. So, the reason why we want to dismantle this is just because, this green light program is a part of the overall thinking as Detroit becomes gentrified, which is, we got more, frankly, white folks in the city now, so we need to have increased police presence. We need to make sure that they feel safer by bringing in more police into our communities, and we know that that's not what's making us safer. So, in our breakout discussions, I really want to talk about ways in which we actually can make our community safer, without relying on police, without need for police, because the truth of the matter is they are unnecessary. And, I'm excited to talk with y'all about that today.
My phone just kind of went crazy. I don't know if that's because of all the Wi-Fi and stuff in here, or I don't know if it's being tapped, but it just went crazy. A whole bunch of stuff got erased, and it just was doing some crazy stuff. So I'm gonna try to wing it. I wasn't exactly sure how this was gonna go. I had prepared a biography, which I don't know if you all got it or know anything about. How many of you have ever heard of me before, Barbara Baxter? Raise your hand if you've ever heard of me. Okay, so there are some people here who don't know much about me. I'm on Facebook. I'm really on Facebook. It's interesting because the technology and stuff that exists today was not around when I was born. I remember the first TV to come on our block, and everybody was going over to that person's house just to watch this new thing, TV. Some of you in here, you remember what I'm talking about. And phones had these little holes in them where you dialed rotary. I mean, we've come a long ways. And so I'm just, trying to keep up as much as I can. I don't want to be left behind. But what I would like to talk about in our group discussion is the origins of police. When I think about the word police, I think about the word policy. Police take an oath to serve and protect. But what are they serving and protecting? Policy. A fellow by the name of J. Edgar Hoover, who used to be head of the FBI, was asked a question on nationwide TV. What's more important, law and order or justice? Take a guess what he said. Law and order. Now, I have lived long enough to know that law and order is interpreted differently by certain people in this world than it is by me and the people that I grew up with. When I grew up in this city, it was predominantly white. Even though many black people had migrated here to Detroit for opportunities of work, to come from down south. My people come from down south. Everybody wanted to make $5 a day. That was a lot of money back then. To work in the factories, the hardest jobs, the most dangerous jobs. But to come here, police have never, ever been my friend. When I grew up, we could be standing on the corner, because this is Motown. Everybody here want to be a singer or a musician. My mother wanted me to be a musician so bad I disappointed her. But we would stand on the corner, not breaking any laws that we knew of, just singing, harmony. Somebody said, okay, you take the low part, the bass, you take the middle part, and you take the high part. We just crooning on the corner. Police would come by, ride by, roll the window down. So when we come back around this corner, you better be gone. And you better be gone, because they would bust your head. And nobody was going to do nothing about it. Do you know how sad it is when your parents, as they're raising you, tell you, don't get caught up with the police, because there's nothing I can do to protect you. These are your parents, the people that you have grown up and a baby relying on and believing they could protect you from anything, but not from the police. The police are an extension of the military. Make no bones about it. This country was founded on military. And it still uses military to intimidate. The police, how many of you play chess? They're like the pawns on the chessboard. They follow orders. Their orders are to protect policy. Policy is there to protect property, not people. The first black mayor of this city, Coleman Alexander Young, made a promise to the citizens, particularly the black citizens of Detroit, because police was beating the hell out of us anytime they got ready to. I can tell you many horror stories, but I don't have time to tell you how many times I've been beaten. It was part of growing up in this city. Thrown in jail for no reason, no phone calls, just mistreated because they can. I have enough memories today to last me for the rest of my life. Intimidation, fear. As far as I'm concerned, in a civilized society, we need public safety servants, not police. They are trained to view you differently from the way you view yourself. You are a threat, civilian threat. And if you're a black person or a brown person or a person that they don't like because maybe you're gender non-conforming or they don't like your politics or whatever it is, you don't stand a chance. Because you already presumed guilty. And they can be your judge, jury, and your executioner. That's what I think of when I think of police. Now, I'm going to just throw this out there to you. Over half of the people who are killed, incarcerated, arrested, incarcerated in this system have disabilities. How many of you knew that? How many of you thought that? Over half. The brother here was just talking about a young lady with a mental health problem. She was having a crisis. She needed a crisis intervention team, somebody to come and help her. When they came, they wanted to subdue her. Not help her. They don't see things the way we see things. They're not trained that way. Their system doesn't operate that way. They take offense to you when you try to talk to them from a position of authority, because they are the authority. I have on this blue uniform, I have a badge. I have the right to do whatever it is that I choose to do. Now, I know I'm taking a little bit too long because some other people taking long. There you go. Sound different. There you go, Bob. Wow. Like night and day. We have to have conversations. You, me, everybody, about how we want to be governed. It's up to us. You may not feel like you have that power, but you do. You just don't know it. In Germany, they tried to raise the price of gas. As soon as they raised it, guess what they did? The people. They was on the freeway, heard about it on the radio. Price of gas going up. They got out of their cars on the freeway. And said, H-E-double-L, no, you didn't. Back up on the freeway. Stop everything. People come out of their jobs. Say, oh no. Guess what the powers that be did? They lowered those gas prices immediately. Didn't take long. You have the power to change the way you want to see the world. It's up to you. I was not born in a wheelchair. I was in an accident. I had a chance to know what it's like to be an able person. And now I know it's like to be disabled. And I'm telling you, things have got to change. A young lady that's one of my advocates the other day, she called me. I hadn't heard from her in a long time. I said, where you been? She said, Baba, I was in a car accident. I said, oh my God, you okay? Yeah, I'm still alive, I'm okay. But she said, Baba, I never knew the extent of what you've been talking about until now I had experienced it for myself. So I'm glad we're having this conversation today. And it can't stop here today. Everybody up here on this panel is doing work to try to dismantle the things that are keeping us from being free. You have to find your place, your passion, and go to work. If you don't know where to go, you come see me or some of my advocates over here. Stand up. Stand up. You don't got to raise your hand. Stand up. I'm proud of you. All right. That's enough. I don't want you to steal all my thunder. But there's lots of work to be done. Everything that you have to learn, you can't learn it in them books. You got to live. Turn that TV off. That's why it's called television program, because it's programming your brain to go to sleep on real life. It's stuff happening out here in these streets, real stuff. People's water getting shut off. Houses being foreclosed on. Gentrification. Black lives is not mattering. Brown lives is not mattering. Women getting paid less to do the same work that men doing. I could go on and on and on. It's plenty of stuff for you to get involved in. But you got to wake up. You are part of the sleeping giant. You got to wake up and rise up. So anyway, if you want to learn more about what Baba's doing, we'll tell you. Because we got some exciting stuff going on right now. Just like everybody on this panel. because there's two types of fear. I learned this from Muhammad Ali. They asked him, champ, why does it seem like every time you step in the ring, you don't have no fear? He said, are you crazy? I have fear all the time. That man across from me is trying to knock me out. And he weighs over 200 pounds. And he could do it with one punch. But I channel that fear every time when I'm in the gym, working out, preparing, doing sit-ups, doing push-ups, hitting the punching bag, sparring in the ring, getting ready. I'm thinking about that fear. When I'm out doing my running, road work, and I get tired, and my body wants to quit, shut down. That's the time to go to work. I channel that fear into being prepared and doing the best that I can. Some people, when they get afraid, they flee. They want to run. They want to hide. There's some people in here today that don't know how to swim. You know why? Because they won't get in the water. So I'm going to let this mic go now. Because I don't want to get like the Sandman and get hooked, you know, in the Apollo Theater. Thank you.
Let's give another hand to all of these wonderful people. So the next thing we are going to do is break off into small focus groups led by each one of these amazing, amazing people. And Marion is going to come back up to tell you how that group separation is going to go.
All right, so unless you're staying in this room or going to the sanctuary, you're going to have to bring a chair with you. If you're able, pick up a chair, bring it with you. Maybe bring two for someone who maybe isn't able to grab one. So if you want to be with Bridget, raise your hand. You're going to be back here in the children's room. I'll show you where to go. If you want to be with Asha, you're going to be in the front in the parlor room. Siwatu and Arthur, you're going to be out in the sanctuary. And if you're going to be with Baba Baxter, you're going to stay here in this hall. So basically, we're going to spend the rest of the night in small groups. If we miraculously have extra time added to our evening, we can come back together in a large group. But I definitely want to give as much time as possible to these small groups because they're really important. So go ahead.